Thank you. Literacy is the foundation of a sustainable community. And in my 20 years as a volunteer teaching adults how to read and write, I have seen that time and again. So I'd like you to all do me a favor. And tomorrow, don't read. Just for one day, no books, no articles, no menus, no prescription bottles. How about just for a few hours? No memos at work, no letters from your child's teacher, no warning labels. Just give me 25 minutes. No emails, no texts, no tweets. And then if you're able to do that, you might have just a faint glimmer of understanding of what adult literacy learners go through every single second of every single day, and the isolation and the fear and the frustration that they are constantly feeling. And tonight I could sit here and cite all kinds of statistics about the high rate of illiteracy among those who are incarcerated, or talk about how children who are born to illiterate parents continue that sad cycle. But instead, what I want to do is to share some of the stories of our extraordinary learners, because they show so much courage and so much determination. And by sharing their stories, you can just get maybe a taste of what they're going through. One learner I want to talk about is Kevin. Kevin came to a literacy program as part of a high school completion program. And even though he was a very low-level learner, very beginning, his tutor saw extraordinary potential in him. And so she asked, what is it that you really want to do? And what he really wanted to do was to get his driver's license. Because when you're 19 and your grandmother is chauffeuring you around, that is not cool. And so he and his tutor worked on driving signs and laws, and Kevin passed his driving test on the very first try, the first person in his family to do so. All he needed was one person to believe in him and to show him encouragement. And then there was no holding him back once he tasted that little bit of success. So Kevin loved cars, and what he really, really wanted to do was to fix them. So with the help of his tutor, he entered an auto mechanics vocational program, and that's what he's doing today. One huge problem we have with literacy is that adult learners are invisible because they want to be. They want to stay hidden. They don't want their doctors or coworkers or friends or even their families to know their secret. So they hide it and they compensate. We had one gentleman who used to come into the Washtenaw Literacy office every year right before Christmas holding a brand new children's book. And he didn't want a permanent tutor. He just wanted someone to sit with him for an hour or two so he could practice that book and get all those words down, because it was a gift for his grandchild. So here was a man who knew the power of literacy, and he saw the incredible bonding that happens when an adult reads to a child. But he also didn't want his grandson or even his daughter to know that he couldn't read those books without lots of practice. These were the people that he loved most in the entire world, and he had to keep it a secret. And I hear over and over again that this can't be a problem in our community, not in Washtenaw. Yes, it's a problem here. Thousands and thousands of our neighbors can't read their primary ballot, and they can't see those warning signs that flash along I-94. It's happening here. One of my favorite learners is a young woman named Christy, and she came to Washtenaw Literacy desperately wanting to go to college. And even though she had gone all the way through high school and was very bright and very motivated, she didn't have the basic skills necessary to succeed in college. So when we first started working together, I brought in some of my favorite books, Charlotte's Web and Where the Red Fern Grows, and she didn't have a whole lot of interest in those. But then one day, she came in holding a novel that all her friends were reading, and she so wanted to be part of that conversation. So we read a chapter together, and she did pretty well. And so we said, well, we'll each read another chapter for homework and then come back and discuss. So she came back the following week, and she was a little sheepish. She said, oh, I hope you don't mind. I couldn't put it down. I read ahead. She read 200 pages that weekend. She loved that book so much that we used it for everything. We used it for vocabulary and punctuation, for critical thinking skills and reading comprehension, for all the basic skills that she needed. Her first 5-paragraph essay was how vampires are better than werewolves, because the book was Twilight. It wasn't my first choice for reading material, but it did the job. And Christy graduated from Washtenaw Literacy, and she graduated from Washtenaw Community College, and now she has a job in her field. But so many of our learners don't reach their goals because there are so many obstacles standing in the way when you can't read and write. We had one learner who had just the best intentions, but he graduated from high school, and then he started working with a tutor because he was struggling at work with his basic literacy skills. So he and his tutor, Lori, worked on survival words, those words that he needed to get around town, to manage his personal finances. And even though Bob knew that long-term learning to read was going to be the best thing for him, in the short term, he just couldn't make it a priority. There are just too many obstacles standing in his way. So he stopped coming to lessons. Fast forward a few years, and Lori's mom died. So one night, she was sitting there writing thank you notes, and the phone rang, and it was Bob. And he said, "Hey, I read in the paper about your mom, and I just wanted you to know how sorry I am." And Lori was so touched. It meant so much to her that he called. And so they chatted for a few minutes, and it wasn't until after she hung up the phone that it hit her. I read in the paper. We never know the kind of impact that we will have on our adult learners, but we do know that just a little bit of literacy makes all the difference. And I would love to tell you that we're solving this problem and that it's getting better, but it's not. It's getting worse, because day-to-day life has more literacy demands than it did 5 or 10 years ago. And more learners are coming into our office holding a diploma that they can barely read. But I'm still optimistic because I have met our learners, and they are extraordinary. They show so much courage, and all they want is to make a better future for themselves and their families. And the most important thing I can do is to make them more visible. So I'm going to end where I started with Kevin. Kevin recently scored an 87 on a test in his auto mechanics class, the highest in his class. He is achieving academic success that he never imagined possible. And his joy and his pride is eclipsed only by his tutors, because she found in working with Kevin that she had a real passion for teaching. So at the age of 73, she became a certified yoga instructor. And now, in addition to still working with Kevin, she's teaching senior yoga. Literacy changes lives, and it impacts every single one of us. And for us to truly have a literate, sustainable community, we all have to recognize that there is a problem and chip in to help fix it. Thank you.